Chelsea versus Newcastle preview. Let's get straight into it. Sorry I haven't been able to upload much this week at all. There's not really been any shorts or anything. I've been doing a lot of written work, a lot of outsourced work that is not for myself. And then just away from that, it's been a tough week. Very long, very tiring as well. So haven't had the time to get into these videos, but I wanted to get this done for the Newcastle game because people loved it for the Liverpool game. And really quickly, I just want to touch on exactly what went right about the Liverpool game that we actually predicted in the preview. So let's quickly go into that before we get into the preview here.
The build-up for Chelsea's first goal showed exactly how Chelsea can carve through that Liverpool defensive system, with Palmer dragging Jones away from play to begin with. Then performing a lovely little spin, which sends Curtis Jones off balance, which then requires Endo to pull over, which now leaves Enzo Fernandez breaking from deep as that free man, which is something we spoke about, how you can utilise and affect their pivot, stretch them apart and find that spare man. Because of this, Enzo Fernandez is the one arriving free in the box. He has time to even take a touch and slot it into that bottom corner, giving Chelsea the perfect start.
Okay, so let's get into the Chelsea versus Newcastle preview now. Now, you'll notice that the lineup I've got on screen, very much like, well, it is the lineup from the Liverpool game, okay? I do want to preface, this is being recorded on the Thursday because I go away on the Friday. I'm away. So, the team could change, obviously, depending on the Conference League game tonight. So, as I'm recording, there's a Conference League game tonight. We don't know who's going to start. We don't know how strong Maresca's going to go. And if there's the odd injury, or hopefully there isn't, hopefully enough players are rested. I think Casado wasn't even spotted in training or something a few days ago. So, let's just hope for the best. But the premise of what I'm about to show you will stay the same. It's just the personnel may be slightly different depending on those injuries. So I just wanted to put that out there so that you know that this is being pre-recorded ahead of time. So we've got that team set up, and for Newcastle, they're without Joelinton, so Willock's in the team here. This is the team that they played against Brighton where they drew 1-1. So let's start by sort of doing what we did last week and highlighting where I think the key battles are going to be and the key areas that we need to focus on in this video. One of which is going to be Cucurella, one of which is going to be Cole Palmer, and one of which is going to be Neto versus Livramento. That's sort of a duo battle that we're going to be talking about. Let's move into how it's going to look in possession, because I think that's sort of where we'll start, how we can build up, how we can hurt this team. Now, in terms of mannerisms for this game, whilst I move things over, I do think, and we're going to have to talk about why I've got Palmer here, because that's a big part of this video. I do think that we go into this game where it's the hardest game of the three that we've got left, in terms of we're away from home against Newcastle, who have been very strong recently. And I do think, as much as people won't really like to hear it, I do think you come into this game with a slight risk-averse nature. I do think a draw isn't a bad result. Now, do you come into the game looking for a win? Of course. Of course you do. Because it would almost guarantee the fact that we get Champions League football. But I think you do it in a way that you pick your moments and you are more risk averse, because a draw isn't the worst result. Like Maresca's even said, was it the draw against? Can't even remember who it was against, but he came out and said that if you're not going to win, you absolutely can't lose. And especially in a game like this, I think it's even more sort of worth pointing out. Now, on the ball, it would look something like this. And I think what's key is that we're going to talk about why I've got Palmer on the left in a minute, because I think that's such an important factor. But it all comes down to how Newcastle will press Chelsea. Now, I'll try and filter in a few examples throughout as we go. But essentially, what I've seen when watching a lot of Newcastle's games, and again, watching through the games ready to record this preview, is they will play quite similarly in that sort of 1-4-1 midfield and then the 4. So 4-1-4-1 pressing scheme, which can then turn and alternate between who goes. So Tonali could step up and it can become a 5 in midfield, or one of the wingers, usually Barnes, can step up and it can look sort of like that. And then Livramento will press up too. So that will sort of disjoint the team, leave Newcastle with a 3 at the back. Temporarily. So that's something to keep an eye on. But within this 4-1-4-1, what usually you'll see is these two players step up to sort of play on the pivot. So Casado, Lavia, man marked in the pivot by these two. Now Isaac, he's going to stay in and around the middle, and he's going to look to lock off either side of the pitch, which fairly sort of normal nowadays in the 4-1-4-1 scheme. However, what Newcastle have done in recent weeks, especially with Trippier being on this side and having Livramento, who's a little bit more athletic, a little bit more sort of quick to jump, agile in the press, is they've been sort of tilting play to one side by having Isaac lock off this side of the pitch more often. Barnes step up onto this centre back, so it almost looks like a 2. Livramento press up into here again because Neto will be here. So you've got Livramento a little bit higher, sort of cheating the play, almost cheating that side of the pitch. Tonali over, Murphy sort of back. So you end up with this sort of shape where it can almost look like a 2-2-2/3, depending on where Livramento's placed, with these 3 sort of man for man at the back, shuffled over. That is how things can begin to look with how they press. So how can Chelsea exploit that? Well, quite simply, that is why I've put Palmer on this side of the pitch, because these 2 can be key in this game if that is what Newcastle are trying to do, because they're going to try and lock that side of the pitch off. That's the way they don't want you to play down. They want to lock that side. So if I sort of show what Chelsea are looking to do is bait that press so that Barnes comes onto Chalobah, and Isaac is trying to block this off, because then Isaac is sort of in this triangle, if you want to call it a triangle, between these players here. And he's trying to stop the progression on that side of the pitch. What Chelsea will then want to do, and again, Sanchez can help too, they can split either way. Chelsea want to attack this space, because this is where the space is. Because Murphy is dropped off, he's being pinned back by the pocket player, which again is Palmer, and we'll speak about why. Madueke is pinning Trippier high on the left. Again, could be massively key in this game. That's a very favourable matchup for Madueke in terms of when he gets going and can sort of use that aggressive tenacity to beat him time on time. If Chelsea can then find this space, Cucurella has the run of the pitch, and this is where Chelsea can find a lot of joy, is if they can find the ball with Cucurella in here. Because what you've now got is the man-to-man structure. You've played past Isaac, who's trying to block it off. So you've played through the underloaded side of the pitch, where they're trying to block you off from. Barnes is pushed up on Chalobah, Neto's and Livramento again, key battle throughout the whole game. Enzo's over here, so Tonali can't he's having to, we've spoke about this a few times with a 4-1-4-1. The problem is with this sort of like lone 6 is they are usually stuck between the 2, but they have to sort of go cheat to one side, usually the ball side, so that then the winger then has to push in and sort of mark Palmer. So already this is a favourable matchup, because you've got Jacob Murphy on Cole Palmer, your star man. So if they want to change that, then it's something else that they're going to have to do with if Tonali comes over. Enzo's going to have so much space, or they're going to have Livramento sort of playing between the 2, which will cause them different issues. So by doing this and having Palmer in that space, Murphy now has the decision to make. Does he jump out to apply pressure on Cucurella, leaving Palmer, which means Shah's going to have to press up, or Trippier's going to have to come over, one of the 2, which will usually be Shah, because you can't really leave Madueke out here unopposed. So Palmer's going to he's in control, and this is where he's in control of the game. And if Murphy doesn't go with him, and he's just looking, and he literally tries to stay with him here, then Palmer's got the chance to sort of show to feet, get the ball into his feet, and again, Cucurella can just drive it forward himself, or Palmer being on the left side of the pitch, ball to his feet, can spin off into here on his stronger foot, and he can then look to create on that strong foot. He can either slip that ball into Madueke here, which will be a very sort of impactful ball that he could play with, Madueke beating Trippier for pace, or he can spin Murphy himself. Something he does very well is sort of like his timing on the ball. He doesn't rush. If he gets that ball to feet against Murphy, he'll know that he's got the upper hand in that scenario, and he will sort of jibe and jiggle until he can beat Murphy. And if he does beat Murphy and he gets around him, all of a sudden, Palmer's at the defence, and you've now got Neto bursting, Enzo bursting, Jackson bursting, Madueke bursting. And that's how you get onto that back line and attack it. So that's going to be a key part of this game, the build-up. And that's why I've got Palmer on the left, not only for his strong foot bias, but also because of the matchup with Murphy and the ability to pin Murphy back into the back line. If you swapped these over, yes, it would work, but Palmer's not going to have as much impact on the game because Tonali, like, that's the side that you're not going to be playing on as often. So that means Enzo's going to be a man. Enzo, I don't think, has the same ball manipulation as Palmer. He's going to be right-footed to be coming inside rather than finding that Madueke outside, that matchup that you kind of want to attack and exploit with that pass in between the centre-back and the right-back. So I don't think you'd get the same level of efficiency out of it, but it's an option. But like I say, Cucurella attacking that space as well is going to be key. So that is why we had Cucurella and Palmer highlighted on that side of the pitch for the build-up purposes and how Chelsea can sort of affect the game. Again, Jackson, as usual, if he can split this defence, can he drop into here, receive the ball and turn? That's another big factor of the game. As per with teams, it depends how aggressive they're going to be on him. That's something that's quite common with how we play. But the other sort of thing that we highlighted was Neto. Now, why Neto and Livramento? Well, like I said with Trippier, he isn't as attacking nowadays as, say, Livramento, who's much quicker to burst out from the back. He's got that pace, and with Caicedo being the inverting from right back to central midfield and being pinned at times in the middle, like especially when the ball breaks, Neto's going to have to do the job of sort of slowing that down and stopping Livramento from making that bursting run. Because if Barnes takes Chalobah inside, that's Neto's job. And that's another reason why I think Madueke should start on the left, Neto on the right, because I think this matchup is better defensively for Chelsea, having Neto drop into this space and just work hard off the ball to stop Livramento from generating any sort of chaotic attacks for Newcastle down that left-hand side. With that being said, I think that will be a key battle at both ends of the pitch. I think Neto can get the better of him, attack it. Again, Livramento is a brilliant defender, but he's on his wrong foot. So I think Neto will sort of naturally, he looks to come inside, but I think he'll sort of have a little bit of joy, sort of faking that to come inside on Livramento's strong foot and then looking to burst on the outside instead. I think that's something that could work really well, but we'll have to see. Anything else that we was going to touch on? I think really quickly we could just sort of speak about how Newcastle are going to set up on the ball, because it is quite similar to that of Liverpool in terms of they look to sort of play with almost a 4-3-3, right? With Tonali in here, both centre mids, and then Livramento and Trippier. Again, you've got them sort of wide, but they're narrow enough, again, like Liverpool do, where if that ball breaks, they are in close enough proximity that it's not going to just completely open them up to those spaces in between. So what we've seen recently is this sort of shape on the ball, but it has the eights can drop high to low to sort of affect the build-up. And of course, you've got quite dynamic wingers who are willing to run in behind. They're willing to drop deep and receive the ball. Same with Isaac, who can sort of receive the ball, hold up play, and do all of that stuff. So I think the key in this pressing scheme for Chelsea is going to be how do you limit Tonali? Because what you usually have is Chelsea sort of pressing in this somewhat of a 4-2-2, 4-4-2, sorry, slash 4-4-1-4-1, like we said earlier, with Lavia sort of being at the base and Enzo pushing up. Now, what I think is going to happen in this game is Palmer, it's going to be a little bit different because you're going to have a few players that have to play sort of dual responsibility roles. And what I mean by that is instead of having just the two up front, where Palmer's not got as much of a role, I think Jackson is going to be very much on that burn side of the pitch, trying to block that side off. Palmer is going to have the role of sort of staying between Shah, applying pressure when he needs to, but also just trying to make sure Tonali doesn't have such easy access to the ball. He's not going to be on Tonali all the time to stop him. But it's one of those roles where he has to be there and he has to sort of affect the game in that sense. Then you're going to have Lavia, again, probably with Bruno, if he's pushing up into here. Willock and Enzo. And then you've got Caicedo on Barnes. And then you've got the two, hopefully, who can balance with Isaac. But if one of them breaks away, you've got the defender that can step up either side. Now, the issue with that is if Lavia gets dragged over here, Enzo has got to be quite defensively switched on because Willock might drag him away and it might actually end up that Enzo is deeper than Lavia. That is the only reason, like I said, with the attacking side of things, I do think Palmer should play on the left. that might be the only reason that we switch things around and we actually play with Palmer on the right, because in that scenario, Jackson would sort of press from this side, Palmer would press over here, and it would allow Enzo to do that and Lavia to do that, and that would then mean that Lavia has a little bit more sort of ability to play in between a few of those lines, a little bit more central, whilst Enzo and Bruno just sort of battle it out on that side in a 1v1 where they're sort of man-to-man against each other the entire time. And again, the roles stay the same with Tonali, Palmer, Enzo maybe having to jump onto Tonali and sort of pass Bruno on, but so on and so forth. So I do think Cole Palmer, this could be his game to sort of break out of that rut. I know that he scored a penalty in the last game, and he was unbelievable against Liverpool, even without that penalty. So I think we're starting to see a little bit of that form come back in terms of overall performance. But even then, I was never really worried about his overall performance. So let's see what they do. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like. Let me know any questions. I'll try and get to them in the comments. And I'll be back with daily content from next week. So please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.